All right, so today we're diving into a protocol from French YouTuber Louis Escure on how to reclaim your focus in what he calls a hyper-sexualized world. And he kicks things off with a pretty blunt question. He opens his whole argument by asking his audience to just be honest with themselves. When was the last time? Was it a couple of hours ago? A few days? Maybe 2 months? He puts this question out there right away to set the stage for a problem he believes is both deeply personal and, well, massively overlooked. So, how did we even get to this point? Well, the first part of his argument lays out the core idea that this kind of hypersexualized content isn't on the fringes anymore. It's moved right into the mainstream. Escure's point is that this isn't about some specific hidden corner of the internet anymore. You see it everywhere. Porn actors becoming mainstream YouTubers, big-name influencers starting OnlyFans accounts, not to mention the constant barrage in ads, music videos, and just scrolling through your social media. In his view, it's just become totally normal. And this is really the heart of his concern. He argues that this isn't just harmless fun. The idea is that being exposed to this stuff constantly creates a totally warped perception of reality, of relationships, and that it leads to some pretty devastating effects, both for individuals and for society as a whole. Okay, but how does this actually work? The source material doesn't frame this as some kind of moral failing. Instead, it's presented as a biological process, basically a neurochemical hack of our brain's own reward system. And right at the center of this whole thing is dopamine. The source just calls it the motivation molecule. It's that chemical in your brain that pushes you to go after rewards, giving you focus, drive, and energy. But the thing is, it can be hijacked. So what makes today's content so incredibly powerful? The source points to what he calls an addictive trinity. First, you've got constant, 24/7 access right on your phone. Second, an absolutely infinite amount of content. And third, relentless novelty. There's always something new. That combination, he says, is unbelievably potent. And all of this creates this really powerful addiction loop. See, it starts with just being exposed to cues all around us. That triggers a dopamine hit, a little chemical reward for your brain. Pretty soon, your brain starts craving more and more of it. And eventually, you get desensitized. The constant high makes regular everyday life start to feel, well, kind of boring. So what's the actual cost of getting stuck in this loop? The next part of the source material really digs into these hidden consequences, arguing that the true price for all this instant gratification is way, way higher than we realize. The author paints this really stark picture. On one hand, you have the expectation, what we think we're getting, pleasure, fun, a bit of relief. But then there's the reality. The emotional aftermath he describes is this ugly mix of guilt, shame, emptiness, and just a total lack of energy. And according to the source, these feelings don't just stop there. They lead to all these cascading negative effects. He claims it drains what he calls masculine energy, creates a really distorted view of relationships, makes it hard to form real connections, and in the end, it just leaves you feeling like a passenger in your own life instead of the one at the control. Now, to really hammer this point home, the author makes a pretty direct and provocative claim. He says, and I'm quoting here, "Every time you ejaculate, you drain your masculine energy. You are already sexually satisfied, so why pursue a dream?" His whole argument is that the cycle of easy gratification literally saps you of the biological drive you need to chase bigger, more meaningful goals. Okay, so after laying out the problem and all its consequences, the source shifts gears and gets to the solution, a reset protocol that's designed to help you take back control. And here's the good news. The author says that, according to research, these neurological effects are reversible. And he really stresses this point. Breaking free isn't about pure willpower, because that can fail you. Instead, it's about following a clear, step-by-step protocol. So, this protocol is built on 4 core actions. First, you have to get self-aware and analyze your triggers. Then it's all about replacement, building new, better routines. Next, you engineer your environment by creating barriers to the bad habits. And finally, and this is a big one, he emphasizes connection, finding support. The whole idea here isn't just to stop doing something, it's to replace it. So instead of just scrolling through your phone, you pick up a book. Instead of a late-night screen time, maybe you try journaling. The goal is to consciously redirect that energy into something positive. Now, to make all this actually stick, the author gives some practical advice. You have to engineer your environment. Make the good choices easy, like leaving your running shoes right by the door. And make the bad choices hard. Use apps to block certain websites. Be brutally honest with yourself about what triggers you. Is it boredom, stress, loneliness? And maybe most importantly, you have to be prepared for the tough days. Relapses can happen, and that's part of the process. And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most powerful part of this whole protocol. It's not just about stopping a negative habit. It's about starting a positive mission. It's about finding what the author calls your duty, your ultimate reason why. The source material offers this really fundamental piece of philosophy. He says, don't just sit around and wait to find your passion. Instead, proactively start working on what you feel is your duty, your responsibility. The idea is that this creates a much more powerful internal motivation. So, what does he actually mean by duty? Well, he suggests defining it in terms of service to others, to your family, to your community, or to society. He uses the powerful example of a soldier who goes through incredible hardship, not for himself, but for a cause and a country that's so much bigger than he is. And that right there is the ultimate goal of the entire protocol. It's about taking back all that energy and focus and using it to transform yourself into a pillar, someone that your family and your community can genuinely rely on. So in the end, the source material leaves us with this final question to think about. If you broke that cycle of instant gratification and you took all of that finite energy and pointed it at something meaningful, what could you actually build? What could you achieve?